Every bike, as you'd expect, has to be in perfect trim for the World Speedway Championship at Wembley. Finalists included Ola Nygren, Sweden; Jack Young, Australia and West Ham; Split Waterman, Haringey, England; Brian Crutcher, Wembley in England; Brian's teammate Ronnie Moore, Wembley in New Zealand. Highlights of the racing now. Here's the fourth race between Redmond, Waterman, Biggs and Moore. Ronnie Moore, who was in tremendous form, was an easy winner. Now race number 6. Lawson, Crutcher, Young and Moore. A real ding-dong and a thriller second for the crowd of 80,000. Young was well in the picture, but victory went to Ronnie Moore. Next race, number 7. Price, Biggs, Waterman and Nygren. Ola Nygren was on top of his form and was the young New Zealander's chief rival for the title. He certainly won this race in fine style. 13th race had Moore riding again against Forrest, Biggs and Pundin, but none of them had a chance against Ronnie in spite of his left leg being in an iron splint. You remember he broke his leg in Sweden last July. Brand, Crutcher, Craven and Waterman disputed the 16th. Masterly riding led to victory in this event for Ronnie's friend and teammate Brian Crutcher. 19th race saw Price, Crutcher, Redmond and Pundin in action. It also involved a nasty crack-up between Trevor Redmond, who crashed heavily, and Ove Pundin of Sweden. The 20th event now, Brand, Rigg, Nygren and Moore. It would have meant a run-off for the title, but Ronnie Moore never put a foot wrong and went on to score yet another victory to become world champion. It was a terrific triumph for the 21-year-old Ronnie. His 5th championship final, and he'd ridden right through every one of his races with a clean sheet. How they cheered him at Wembley. Ronnie Moore, Speedway champion of 1954.
The 16 riders in the World Speedway Championships at Wembley were introduced to Field Marshal Earl Alexander of Tunis before racing began. Last-minute adjustments are made in the pits as the riders prepare for action. The champion from New Zealand, Ronnie Moore, adjusts his goggles while Jack Young, happily recovered from his accident, prepares for the fray. Race number 1, Crutcher, Moore, Wright and Forrest. A fine opening quartet bringing you Speedway at its best. This one gave first blood to Ronnie Moore. On to race number 5 with Jack Young and Brian Crutcher prominent. Crutcher was runner-up to Moore in the 1954 World Final, and he was a hot favourite on this occasion. But Jack Young beat him in this heat. Next, race number 9 with Crutcher facing strong competition from the continent. But in the event, Crutcher came in to win. Race number 17 began with bad luck for Norwich and England rider Cyril Roger. But he's all right for the restart. Peter Craven was in this one against Bales and Crutcher. Craven had already beaten Moore in Heat 14, and the points were climbing in his favour. But this time, Crutcher just got ahead. The crowd was certainly getting their money's worth. Real devil-may-care riding with the issue in doubt all the way. But Peter Craven's superb riding gave him 13 points out of a possible 50. A great achievement which gives him the World Speedway title. This is the first time an English rider has won since 1949. A triumph indeed for Peter, who's only 5 feet tall, the Tom Thumb of the Speedway.
A year later, Barry was back at Wembley to try and repeat his triumph. Obi Thundin was also looking for his second championship, as was England's Peter Craven. Briggo stormed into the lead in his first heat to set the tone for the rest of the night. The next heat went the same way. The first bend demonstrated his aggressive style. By scoring a maximum 15 points from his 5 rides, Barry took the title decisively. This time, there was no need for a run-up for Barry. The dramas that year were provided by Peter Craven, Orb Lawson and Ken McKinley, who had tied for 3rd place. Craven and McKinley both crashed out, leaving Lawson to take 3rd. But once again, Briggo had beaten his arch-rival Thundin, this time without the controversy. Then, over a disagreement with Wimbledon over the princely sum of £30, the then current world champion announced his retirement from the sport.
And Heat now, and a good start who once again is essential, but it's Jeff Mudger-Poole who's well away this time, followed by Jeff Pimer, 3 or 4 good riders there, and there's Jeff Mudger-Poole out in front. He's followed by Cliff Cox, the local Bristol boy, In third place we have Jeff Pimer, who first rode on the Speedway in 1933. Still it's Jeff Mudge, building up a good lead. Cliff Cox still in second position, followed by Jeff Pimer, one of the fine veterans of the sport. And Cliff Cox has gone through on the top bend. Can he hold it now as he comes into the pit bend? Yes, he has. A very good line indeed. Bags of power going out. And it's Cliff Cox having taken over now from Jeff Mudge in the lead as they come in towards the final lap of this race. Oh, no one's going to touch Cliff Cox now. Oh, lovely slide. Control it, boy. Well done. A bad one. A bad corner there by Mudge. Pimer way on his tail. He could possibly catch him on this top bend, but no, it's Cliff Cox. Cliff Cox, an easy winner.
For the Speedway battle at Wembley, Jack Young, Australia and Coventry, Harry Briggs, New Zealand and New Cross, and Ronnie Moore, New Zealand and Wimbledon. Over Fundin, Sweden and Norwich, Josef Hofmeister, West Germany, and Chum Taylor, England and Southampton. Just a few of the aces about to decide this year's champion of champions, and there was a packed house when the heats got going. What with the cheers of the fans and the roar of the bikes, it was as noisy as it was exciting. After 20 heats, reigning champion Ronnie Moore, Peter Craven, Bellevue in England, and Over Fundin each had 14 points out of 15, so it was Moore, Fundin and Craven in the runoff. This was as big a thrill as any fan could want. And in the result, the Flying Fundin, winner in 1956, just pipped Moore for the world title. great riders, and to this year's greatest, the trophy was presented by Norman Wisdom. The lap of honour was rightly the signal for more roars of applause.
At Wembley Stadium, among contestants for the World Speedway Championship, Ronnie Moore from New Zealand. And a new face, Igor Alexandrovich, a master of sport in the Soviet Union. The first Russian ever to ride at Wembley, he came in 10th. Sixteen finalists from 5 countries competed individually over 20 heats for the world title. For the 70,000 fans who turned up for Speedway's biggest night of the year, it certainly produced plenty of thrills. The world's brightest dirt track stars fairly sizzling round the cinders. Spectators were kept in doubt until Heat 19, when the issue was finally clinched. Manchester's Peter Craven became the first Englishman to win the World Crown since 1955. And he won it then, too.
If my memory serves me right, this was the year that Ollie Olsen moved on to Coventry. And I believe that's Jimmy Mack in front, Jim McMillan, problems at the back for the rider in yellow and black on the outside. And well, the Golf Royal British League as it was in those days. We apologise for the in the there we go. It's Phil Crump showing his class in that white helmet. And of course the Beatles very synonymous with the world in these days. And along with John Parry. Very rare footage indeed comes from Somerton Park, the home of the Wasp of Newport, and days gone by. And this match was 1966, and it was taken against Wolverhampton. The skipper of the Wasp, no other than Albie Golden. And I'm sure Albie would love to see these films and footage. More of Albie later on when the Eastbourne Eagles take on Long Eaton, and we look forward to that as well. But here we are then at the Somerton Park Stadium, of course, the home of Newport County in the football days as well. And nowadays, of course, they race at Queensway Meadow. But nevertheless, this is some very, very rare footage. And thanks go to Mr. Morgan down there in Newport, South Wales, still a Wasp fan, who sent this one up to us. Like we say, not wonderful quality.
Wembley, the most coveted trophy in the Speedway world, the Champion Shield. And there to do battle for it were the cream of the world's Indoor Circuit riders from Russia, Sweden, Britain, Poland, New Zealand, in fact anywhere where they ride Speedway style. Barry Briggs, 4 times world champ. Russia's Igor Plachanov. And the man of the evening, Ove Fundin of Sweden. 75,000 were there to see the battle of the Speedway giants as they roared away in the qualifying heats. A win for England's Ray Wilson. Another heat, and the heat really on. Every rider tense and waiting for the tapes to go up. A time when almost anything can happen, and does. New Zealand's Ivan Morga, first home. But in the next race, Barry Briggs met his match in Plachanov. It was a great win by the Russian and quite a shock for Briggs and the spectators. But riding like a real champion was Fundin, unaffected by the mishaps and spills of others. And there was Fundin, thundering home to the world title for the 5th time. A great champion, and retiring a great champion, for this was his last international meeting. It must be a right decision. He's a Swede. Wembley, where a 30,000 crowd watched Swedish, Polish, Czech and British riders battle it out for the World Speedway Team Championships. There were 16 heats, and victory was decided on a point system. This was heat number 11. Sweden's Ove Fundin overtaking Barry Briggs of Britain. Fundin held the lead to win the heat, but Britain was piling up the overall points. Heat number 13. This time it was Edward Jankats of Poland who led the field, but Britain's Martin Ashby hung grimly onto his tail. Each country had 4 riders and 1 reserve, and in every heat there was 1 rider from each team. Britain's number 1, leading here, was Ivan Major, who is the current world individual champion. A win for Major, and when the points were added up, the British team were the new world champions. For the first time, but not the last. Hackney Speedway Stadium. The new racing season was only days away when the stars of the East London Cinder Circuit put in one of their last tough training sessions before their home match against Wolverhampton. Captain Colin Pratt got set for a practice race with his 3 teammates. Training sessions like this were taking place all over the country as the daring young men on their souped-up machines tried to hit top form before the starting tapes launched them into the 1968 Speedway season. Millions of fans get their thrills watching men like these in action. The riders put everything they've got into their racing. Sometimes it's just a bit too much.
Stadium and a crowd of 70,000 for one of the unique nights in the calendar of this famous arena. For these 70,000 people are Speedway fans who follow what is regarded as a minority sport. In fact, there are 2 divisions with 35 teams, and these teams are watched by almost 200,000 people every week of the season. The World Speedway Championship final is their night of the year. They come from Scotland, from the North and the Midlands, from Wales, as far west as Plymouth, for even though they may have no representative of their own team, they are here to see the top 16 riders compete for the world crown and a cheque worth £1,000. And the fanfare of the Royal Marines heralds the entry of the gladiators into the famous Wembley Arena. On come the riders, the top 16 riders being driven around the track, 2 per sports car. There are 16 riders and there are 2 reserves. Those are the first 2. Sir Bjorn Harrison and Nigel Grewcock of Great Britain, Sir Bjorn Harrison of Sweden. And they're coming around the track to take up their position alongside the starting gate. So there's Ove Fundin on the left, the man who's won the world title 5 times. And now, the reigning world champion on the right, Ivan Major of New Zealand, riding for Bellevue Aces, and with him, the reigning European champion, Vladimir Klementiev of the Soviet Union. And finally, 2 world champions together. Number 15 nearest to us is Ronnie Moore of New Zealand and Wimbledon, and on the outside there, Barry Briggs. On the right, the man who has won this title 4 times and is out to win it again. He wants to equal that record held by Ove Fundin. And so we come up for heat number 1 of the World Speedway Championship. We've got a Swede, an Englishman and 2 Poles.